Hey everyone, Liz here, and today we're going to talk about tools. Tools and equipment are a big part of what we need to be successful with any gel nail product or any nail product for that matter. So I wanted to go over some of the basic tools, talk about what they're used for, and possibly dispel some misinformation about them, as well as break down for you some of the main core equipment you're going to need. So I have a smattering here of very basic nail tools. And I wanted to start with abrasives. Abrasives are a category that includes everything from buffers to nail files. We could also include our nail bits in there that we use for e-filing. I am going to be talking about e-filing in a completely separate list of videos because e-filing is something that needs more of a deep dive in order to fully understand all of the ins and outs of that. But we have here a nail buffer. We have two different kinds of typical basic nail files. One is a zebra nail file. One is a regular nail file. I have also some metal implements. So often metal tools are referred to as implements. And the common implements are a cuticle pusher with some kind of scraper usually. We have cuticle nippers. We have a nail clipper. We also sometimes have cuticle scissors depending on your preference or your education source. And we also have some other reusable tools like scrub brushes that I use on a very regular basis. Now we also have some disposables within this, and disposables are products where they aren't metal implements that can truly be disinfected between uses. Even though nail files often say they are washable, in general the best practice is to use disposable products once and toss them. Now if you're doing your own nails, this is less of an issue, but it is a good idea to make sure that you're not using your nail files until there's no grit left. We want to make sure that we're always using fresh equipment because it's going to yield us the best results. Some other disposable tools that we often use are nail wipes because we use these all the time to clean and to remove inhibition layers. And one of my other favorite things are nail foils that have a previously attached pad. This is what we would use with acetone to remove any soak-off product. These come in very handy. Now there are lots of different types of iterations of these tools, but I chose my favorites because I think this is going to summarize for you truly what you need, as well as dispel some of the maybe marketing tactics that you might see, and also talk about what these tools are actually intended to be used for. So let's start with buffers and nail files. Okay, so here on my table, I have several different types of buffers and nail files. One of the ones I constantly get asked about are glass nail files. Glass nail files usually look something like this, and they are a really good option for natural nail care. I don't do a lot of natural nail care, natural nail polish, stuff like that, so I hardly ever reach for a tool like this, but they do have a very fine grit. They are really great for natural nails because of that fine grit, and it is a good option in case you guys are interested in something that's reusable. They can be washed, they can be disinfected, all of those things. I have noticed the grit does wear off pretty quickly, but they are really great if you're looking for something to manage your natural nails on the go. Here I have a couple different examples of buffers. So buffers and nail files can come in a variety of shapes. You can see I have traditional straight files down here, which a buffer could easily come in that exact same shape. I have a moon shape and also this rhombus shape. It really comes down to personal preference. Lots of companies choose shapes based on what they think is going to be the easiest to use or the most efficient to file with. But honestly, the size and shape choice comes down to each individual. I personally just really like straight nail files. I find that they're easier to stack in a drawer. I'm not averse to any other shape, but it's just one of those things I often find myself reaching for straight nail files and straight buffers. But there are some other shapes that you might run into. And the idea behind some of these different shapes is that if you have a rounded tip here, you could use that at a different angle to get in there around the cuticle area. You also have some of these pointy areas where that can help you get around the cuticle area if you're filing in a different direction. So if I'm buffing around the nail, that little corner there, that rhombus shape allows me to kind of swoop in a little bit closer around the skin. And again, I can use that rounded shape to kind of fit into the natural cuticle area. You could also use the corners for different reasons. So having a few angles on it does make it a little bit more versatile. But like I said, I personally just reach for straight. That's my personal favorite. Moon shape is definitely something that's more popular. Again, the idea is that you can file around the cuticle area with a swooping motion, and that rounded shape mimics the shape of your cuticle area. But I personally find that I like something that I can use both sides equally and are symmetrical. So nail files come in a lot of different grits and a lot of different varieties. Grit actually is something that we use to talk about the particles per square inch. So if we were to measure just a square inch of a nail file, however many particles of grit there are in that square inch is what the number is going to mean. So the more particles we have in a given inch, the finer the grit is going to be. It's going to be less coarse. So the higher the number, the more fine the nail file is. The lower the number, the more coarse the nail file is. And that goes for buffers, it goes for probably even other types of abrasives. And you'll find that even with hardware things like sanding paper, if you're going to do some woodworking, the higher number means there's more particles per square inch or per square centimeter, depending on how it's being measured. And that is going to be a higher number, therefore it's a finer feel. The coarseness that I usually work with for any given nail file, any type of gel nail service, including natural nail work, is 180 grit. I find that 180 is the perfect number for working on natural nail shaping as well as working with gel. Gel is a very soft and easy to file product. Even hard gels are so much easier to file than acrylic. So you'll find that 180 grit takes you a long ways. I also love nail files that are 180 on one side and 100 grit on the other. That way if I need some extra filing power, I have that 100 grit side that is more coarse that I can go back to if I need to do some extra removal or trying to really file through a lot of product. The color here difference, the zebra is something that's very popular just because zebra means it's a mix of different types of grits, and the zebra refers to kind of that striped pattern that you can see here with the gray and the white. Supposedly zebra nail files are expected to last longer than a regular nail file. I haven't found that to be the case. To me, it usually just refers to the different pattern of the grit being applied to the nail file. And then also we have just plain Jane regular nail files, which are usually the thing that I use day in and day out. And I love foam core nail files. So different nail files might be made with different materials. You can see this one is thinner and it's actually made with a wood core. So it's actually a wood piece that is then having grit applied to it. I like the foam core, or sometimes referred to as sponge core. These ones usually have some kind of maybe plastic inside and then they have some spongy layers. It makes for a very cushy nail file as well as a flexible nail file. And when filing, that sponginess conforms to the nail plate shape a little bit more. So similar to a buffer where it's extra squishy, it's all kind of foam with this plastic insert in the middle. The more spongy a nail file is, obviously the more flexible it's going to be, but it also does a better job of conforming to the nail that we're filing on. All right, so let's talk about metal nail implements next. And I have some, again, high-level examples of common tools that you would use on a regular basis when doing your manicuring and different work. So first off, we have a cuticle pusher. Cuticle pusher is a tool that we use all the time when it comes to nail care. We're using it to scrape actual dried cuticle off of the nail plate. If you've watched my previous Gel Nail Fundamentals 2.0 videos about anatomy, you'll already know the difference between the eponychium or the proximal nail fold and what cuticle actually is. Cuticle is that dried material on the nail plate, and so we use the cuticle pusher to actually scrape cuticle off of the nail plate and rid the nail plate of any debris. We also use that spoon-headed pusher or different shaped pusher to push back the proximal nail fold and to create maximum exposure of the nail plate before we start working on it. And typically any cuticle pusher is going to have some kind of scraper on the other end so that you can also use this blade to clean out maybe the sidewalls, to maybe remove some product off of the nail, and also it can be used to remove that dried cuticle from the nail plate as well. One of the features that I love about specific cuticle pushers is that they have this textured grip. And when talking about nail files, when nail files are manufactured, they are printed and cut out of a big sheet of the same material. So when they are cut out into this shape, oftentimes they will have a very sharp edge. and that can cause cuts, just like paper cuts when we're using them around skin. So one of the things we always want to do when using a nail file for the first time is we want to remove those sharp edges. So we're going to take our nail file, put the edge of it at a 45-degree angle, and you can use your textured grip of your cuticle pusher to prep those edges and remove any of those sharp pieces of grit that might cause an actual cut. So we can do this on all four sides. You can flip your nail file over and do it and just completely remove any of those sharp edges all the way along the nail file. And now we have something that isn't going to cause any cuts, even if we're filing closely to skin. So that's a nice feature of getting a cuticle pusher that actually has that kind of metal textured grip. And obviously as a metal implement, we can disinfect this, we can autoclave it, we can basically do whatever we want as long as we have that high grade stainless steel. And stainless steel is going to be what you find as the main material for any high quality metal implements. There are cheaper metal implements out there, but I recommend stainless steel because it is going to be something you're going to be able to clean again and again without any rusting. All right, we have cuticle nippers, and cuticle nippers is a funny one because they really aren't for nipping cuticle, they are for actually nipping keratinized skin or stretched proximal nail fold around the nail plate. Again, referring back to my anatomy video that I did. So cuticle nipper is a terrible name for this tool. However, that is the name that it has been given and is already so far spread, we're not probably going to be able to undo that. So we'll talk about when we get into actual prepping the nail plate and manicuring, how we go about using this tool in the proper way. But I wanted to let you know that this is actually intended to be used for nipping hangnails, keratinized skin, anything that we want to remove, but we need to do it with caution. One of the most overused tools in a manicuring kit is the cuticle nipper, and if you are bleeding when you are using this tool, you are overdoing it. So that's a good rule of thumb. We also have nail clippers. So nail clippers we use to shorten nail length. I always recommend you do not use nail clippers for any type of artificial product removal. When we clamp down and crush product, it can actually cause lifting, and it can also cause unneeded stress on the actual nail plate underneath. So if you're going to shorten artificial nails, we want to do that with filing them down instead of clipping them down. But nail clippers are great for things like natural nails or toenails. And I personally love straight edge nail clippers. So when we're talking about shortening a nail, what I find so when we have a curved opening on our nail clippers, the challenge is that if we are working on a natural nail that's this wide, it's not going to effectively fit. So we're going to end up like trying to cut this. Maybe we cut too far in like this. So I find that the curved nail clippers are a little bit more difficult to work with. When we have a straight edge nail clipper, what we can do is no matter what the shape of the nail is, we can basically make lots of cuts like this across to actually shave off the shape into whatever we want. So creating lots of straight lines actually allow us to create any size of curved shape, even if this is a straight edge opening. If I have something like this, it's a little bit more difficult to create whatever shape I want or to shave it down in the proper way. So that's why I like straight edge nail clippers. All right, so simple tool, and if you guys didn't catch something that I offered on social media pretty recently, one of the cool things that a lot of people don't know about nail clippers is that you can take them apart. So if you put your finger on the back of the clipper and you squeeze down with your thumb, you will be able to actually take the handle off the top. Then you can take the pin out of your nail clippers, and now you have full access to be able to clean and scrub in here and get all of the debris out of there after using them. This is a great technique for if you're a professional nail technician and you're trying to properly disinfect your tools. You can absolutely take them apart. With cuticle nippers, we are able to always like unhinge them very wide, scrub in between all of the hinges. We'll talk about this as we talk about disinfecting tools and how to clean and maintain them, but I wanted to just offer that up as a quick little tidbit of how you can take your tools apart. Then to put them back, all you have to do is put the pin back in. Keep an eye on where you have the hook located. There's always a little hook on one side. You're gonna, again, put your finger behind the pin, squeeze down with your thumb, and then just insert that handle back into that little hook. And now you have your nail nippers and clippers back to regular status. Last but not least, we have cuticle scissors. This is something I often get asked about. People wonder, why would I use nippers versus scissors? It comes down to absolute personal preference. What I will say is that cuticle scissors are definitely more of an advanced tool. I find that they require a lot more education to properly use. Some people find them to be easier to use than cuticle nippers and to get more of a precise removal of that keratinized skin. But I also want you guys to proceed with caution with cuticle scissors. And one of the things that is very important to understand about any of these cutting instruments is that we need to look at the actual quality and sharpness of the tool. If we are going to be using these to remove any kind of delicate area like keratinized skin or hangnails, we want to make sure that we have a proper working tool. So first off, if we're going to use these tools for working on skin, then we only use these tools for working on skin. Do not use the same pair of nippers or cuticle scissors to do anything other than skin. So don't use your same scissors to cut nail forms or stickers or anything like that. Don't use your nippers to remove nail art pieces. We want to make sure that if we're using these instruments, just as if they were surgical instruments, think about them like that. We don't want our doctor using the scalpel that they're going to use on our body to open boxes, okay? So we want to make sure that we understand that we are reserving our high-grade tools for very precise work. You can always have a crappy pair of nippers to use for things like removing crystals or nail art. And you can also have a different pair of regular scissors to be able to use for things like nail forms or stickers. And one other thing I wanted to mention is that blades are usually the big differentiator in any type of nipper or cuticle scissor. So on cuticle nippers, we're talking about the actual length of the blades on the jaw. This is a quarter jaw type of cuticle nipper. I really like shorter blades on a cuticle nipper because it allows us to get into much tighter areas and do much more precise work. What we want to look for is that the blades are actually sharp and that they close perfectly without any type of gap or any type of dents or anything like that. You can also get your cuticle nippers sharpened. I'll provide some information down below on some sharpening services that I've come across where you can mail in your metal implements and get them sharpened, and that applies to cuticle nippers, cuticle pushers, depending on if you want your spoon to be sharpened or your blade to be sharpened, and also works for scissors as well. With cuticle scissors, again, we want to look at the precise way that they close. So we want to make sure that the tip of those blades come to a very perfect point and that they close without any gaps, any dents, anything like that. You also want to be very cautious about dropping your metal tools to make sure that you're not working with anything that's dented or might cause an injury. And cuticle scissors are very, very delicate. You want to make sure that the tips of those blades stay perfectly sharp, because that is what we're going to use. Basically, the first third of these blades is what we're going to use for any trimming that happens. And there's curved styles, straight styles. There's literally so many variations of tools these days. But again, it just comes down to personal preference, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of experimentation with some different options to see which one suits you best. Last but not least, one of my all-time favorite tools that I use a lot are reusable plastic scrub brushes. I personally like ones that have a softer bristle. That way they don't feel like your skin is getting filed off when you're using it. If they're too stiff, it'll be really abrasive on the skin. But these are great for washing and scrubbing around your nails before you start working on your hands. We always want to wash our hands and rid our hands of as much bacteria as possible before we start doing nail care. And for professionals, this is a great option for your clients to use to actually clean and scrub underneath their nails and around their nails before you start their nail appointment. As well as these are a great 100% lint-free option for scrubbing down nails, getting rid of nail dust, anything like that. And I also reserve some of them for cleaning my tools. So we'll talk about how we use this one brush for lots of different purposes. Again, I keep them segmented, so oftentimes what I will do is I will use the handle color to differentiate between whether this is for clients washing their hands or for cleaning during nail appointments and keeping those disinfected for appointment use, and or are they used for cleaning tools and scrubbing as we disinfect all of our implements. So some of the other accessories, if you will, that I often use that aren't really necessary tools, but are definitely things that I use on a regular basis are, I love having just a pair of plastic tip nippers. These come in handy for shortening length. And if you are working with plastic tips or even full coverage tip extensions, these are very good to have on hand. They are, like I said, limited. Not every nail size will fit inside of these depending on your particular cutters, but they are just good to have on hand for lots of different purposes. As I was mentioning, we don't want to be using any tools that we're using for skin to cut things like stickers or nail forms or anything besides skin. So we have other scissors that we're going to use for things like nail forms, which is very, very helpful. And the common ones that you'll find in the nail industry are called crane scissors, and it's because they literally look like a crane bird. So you can find these anywhere. They're usually extremely inexpensive. You can usually get a pair for maybe a couple dollars, and they're always good to have on hand for all of those different cutting needs. I personally love having a tool that is reusable when I can use reusable, and orangewood sticks are definitely something that are great for manicuring as well as cleaning up around the cuticle area, but they are a disposable wood product. So I love these stainless steel orangewood sticks, and they offer the same type of shape and function. They also have that textured grip that allows me to prime my nail files, but I love that it has a little bit more precise edge, a little bit wider edge, and there's also some cool adhesive little strips you can put on these to use them for etching the nail plate. But I love this tool. I reach for it all the time. And we have a couple different options that I use. One is just a straight, smooth, pointed edge that could be used for all kinds of things. A little dangerous. You want to make sure you got this capped because it is very sharp. But the other one that I have that I love has a textured tip, and those are wonderful for cleaning around toenails and cleaning under the free edge of any nail or any corners. It really does a good job of getting any gunk or debris out of there. A spatula you're going to use if you use any type of potted or even bottled product for that matter. These are great for mixing colors, mixing dried glitters. You're going to use a spatula very regularly, so having a nice spatula is a good thing. I like this one. It has a small end and a large end, and it's nice and flexible, so I can actually use it almost like a putty knife to mix materials together. Another option for cutting things like nail forms, stickers, striping tape, any of that stuff are tension scissors. Tension scissors, you can find them very, very sharp and very refined as an alternative to cuticle scissors. But I also love just having a regular pair of them for being able to cut stickers or things in tight areas, and having those nice little teeny tiny jaws comes in very handy. And also just the fact that you can just pinch them and they cut makes it very easy for when you're working. A couple of things that this one tool demonstrates that I don't recommend are, I don't recommend porous materials to the extent that you're working on other people. Porous materials really need to be considered as a disposable product. Because we can't thoroughly disinfect porous objects, because they're able to absorb dirt, bacteria, other types of viruses, it's very difficult to completely disinfect something like corundum. Corundum refers to this type of stone material. It's kind of like a pumice stone, but it is a very porous material, unlike stainless steel or other things that I've shown you like plastic. So this is something that I would only recommend if you're working on yourself, or find a really cheap cuticle pusher option if you love these kind of stone cuticle pushers. Find them very inexpensively if you can, so that you can either give them to the client or toss them at the end of the appointment. The other thing I don't recommend are these types of cuticle removers. They have this sort of fishtail blade, like a V-shaped blade, and the idea is that you put the skin in between the blades, push, and it's supposed to trim off that upper layer of skin. I find that these actually over-trim skin big time, and they are never sharp enough to create a precise cut. So I do not recommend these if you come across them as, most likely an at-home user. These are not a tool I would ever use. They are something that are very antiquated, and there's a lot better, safer options to use instead of this. So I hope this video helps give you a little data download on the most common tools you're going to come across, some of my personal favorites and the things that I reach for on a regular basis, as well as some of the ones I recommend you stay away from and why. We will be doing some dedicated videos around more specialized equipment like nail brushes, UV nail lamps, dust collectors, and also some things like PPE that we can use to protect ourselves while working with nail products, especially if we're working with them on a very regular basis. So we'll have some dedicated videos on all of that information. Obviously, you'll also be able to see these tools in action as we move forward with all of our practical videos, like how to actually prep the nail plate, how we're going to apply product, how we're going to work with things like stickers, striping tape, all of those different things that we come across. And additionally, I'll also have some dedicated videos on e-filing equipment, nail bits, because that is a completely another can of worms that we really need to dig into in depth if we're going to understand it completely. So look out for some detailed videos as we continue this Gel Nail Fundamentals 2.0 journey. I'm happy to provide links, which I'll do to the extent possible underneath any of these videos so that you can find these similar tools. If I can offer them myself, I will, and I'll also provide some outside links for places that you can get them from if you need some options. And I'll be in touch again with another episode soon. Hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.